Good Monday to you. It's May the 9th, and this is Real Talk. Ryan Jesperson, John Hicks with you.
Good morning.
Good morning, pal. I'm usually good for at least one of these a year. A good old coffee spill approximately 10 to 30 seconds before I'm about to do something. And I'm kind of excited, actually, for two reasons. Number one, I've spilled coffee all over my show notes, which is quickly turning them into this sort of abstract-looking, ambiguous sort of a piece of art here. But also, you know what's even more significant is that when it happened, and this spill is just extremely recent, very recent, no time to react, as we get set to go live here on this Monday, it's not fazing me one bit. I'm just I'm feeling really positive about this Monday and positive about this week. How was your weekend?
I had a good weekend, and it sets you up for the Monday, doesn't it? Because we're having a very chill morning. We got everything done. We had 20 minutes to sit around.
Don't know what to do with ourselves.
Listen to some jazz. So yeah,
I appreciated that. We've been all the other folks in the building where this studio is are going to start wondering what's up. The smell of fresh coffee from Yeg Coffee Club and jazz, and it's like, what are these guys just hanging out, putting their feet up on a Monday morning?
I thought you were going to say the smell of something else.
Yeah, it's not that chill. Not yet, anyway. We've got a great show in store. We're going to pick up where we left off on a story last week. You remember, if you tune into all of the shows, or if you caught the one with Jessica Scott Reed, she's an animal rights advocate. She's a freelance journalist. She was on talking about avian influenza, specifically culling methods, a story out of Iowa that broke a farm that had culled about 5.3 million chickens, but it was the way it was done that was infuriating a lot of people. It got conversations started, and of course, the way that we roll here on the show, we said we've got conversations booked, for example, with Chicken Farmers of Canada, and Lisa's going to join us, Lisa Bishop Spencer, in just a few minutes. And then we wanted to broaden the conversation, because that's a bigger part in my mind of what Real Talk brings to the table, is the longer form, uninterrupted, casual, see what happens type conversations. And so a couple that farms relatively close to us in Sturgeon County, Alberta, Jeff and Coralee Nonay, are going to join us in approximately 35 minutes time to take us into their family farm, so to speak, and to talk about it. They're in the dairy business. Dairy gets its fair share of criticism as well from animal rights advocates, and so we want to ask some straight up questions. You can chime in and, of course, play a role in where this conversation goes. We'll be keeping an eye on our hashtag RealTalkRJ, our live chat as well. We've got some international stories to cover this week. We're going to be taking a look at what Canadians are doing across Ukraine. The Prime Minister dropping down in Ukraine for a quick visit over the weekend. Not just him, the First Lady too, Jill Biden, you too.
Yeah.
You see Bono in the Edge, like in a train station.
Hey, where there's people suffering, Bono's there.
Sometimes. Bono's kind of feels like he's been out of the mix for a while. It was cool to see him doing it again. It brought back memories of the 1980s where U2 would do these like pop-up shows. You remember their famous video, I think, where the streets have no name on the rooftop. It's like one of the most legendary videos of all time. And by the way, crypto's down too, and people are trying to figure out, is this because of inflation? Is this because of what's going on with the NASDAQ? Is crypto hit with, when tech stocks drop, crypto does, trying to make sense of it? If you took a look at your Bitcoin wallet or your crypto wallet today or over the weekend, you went, what is going on right now? What's causing this? Some people are like, do I need to sell off? Other people going, it's a great time to buy. I like the no-nonsense analysis I get from Benny and his team members at Bitcoin Well. You can find them. I'm not telling you to buy Bitcoin. I'm not telling you to sell your Bitcoin. I'm saying talk to Benny and get a sense of where they believe this is all going. You'll find them under the sponsors tab on our website, ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
So yeah, a surprise over the weekend for obvious reasons. If you're the leader of doesn't matter what country it is, but if you're an international leader, you can't exactly announce when you're going to be dropping in on a war zone to send a message and to show your nation's support and to get a sense of what things look like on the ground. But the Daily Mail and other international outlets reporting the Canada's Prime Minister, and you've seen the photos by now, Justin Trudeau, walking around in public in Ukrainian, in suburbs of Kyiv, in particular, a city that has been bombed relentlessly by the Russians over the past number of days. And of course, this is a big day in Russia too. Have you seen this? It's Victory Day in Russia, where typically that nation celebrates a war victory over the Nazis in World War II. And, of course, there was some speculation, this reporting out of the Globe and Mail, Mark McKinnon, who does a great job there as their international correspondent, that Russia and Vladimir Putin was looking to make a big statement on Victory Day. And today the claim is that the invasion of Ukraine was a success. But, of course, it's described as a muted Victory Day speech because the evidence would suggest otherwise, wouldn't it? The evidence, of course, is that despite the fact that 11,000 troops and more than 130 military vehicles took part in this big celebration through Red Square today, that's, down. The numbers are down from previous Victory Day celebrations, 22,000 troops, almost double a couple of years ago. But this is, a symbol. A lot of people are saying a symbol of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It says a lot that the numbers are down, that it's more muted. Now, the Russians are saying that the warplanes didn't roar over Moscow in their Flying Z. This is that controversial symbol, Russia's main symbol of the invasion of Ukraine. They're saying because of weather. That's why the warplanes weren't there, although the skies were clear over Moscow. Now, what's the real point here? The real point is that there's been unexpectedly fierce resistance encountered by the Russians since Vladimir Putin ordered his forces into Ukraine back on February 24th. Hard to believe it's been that long already. The Prime Minister of Canada sending a message that Canadians are supporting. Check this out from his Twitter account. This was posted just a few minutes before we went live today. Says the Prime Minister of Canada, update, the Canadian flag is once again flying over Canada's embassy in Kyiv. We raised it yesterday to symbolize the formal return of Canada's diplomatic presence in Ukraine. So that's a big deal. And then the PMO posting photos of the Prime Minister himself raising that flag. Justin Trudeau, the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, and Minister Mélanie Joly also meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. And we'll be talking through the week about some of the work that Canadians are doing in Ukraine, including a submission. John, you wanted to enter something. We'll see it a little bit later in the show today. We'll get into this in Positive Reflections presented by Kuby Energy. But a lot of people, a lot of Canadians, just sort of average, ordinary, everyday folks doing what they can.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we'll talk about that later, and hopefully more people do that. I mean, it's just little things they need at the border and stuff, right?
Well, it's easy to contribute, right? And because all these folks like your pal Nestor, who will shine the spotlight on in Positive Reflections as part of it. Don't worry, Becky, we got your submission too, and I'm looking forward to that. Your little guy, this is awesome. Caitlin is Hunter's. Or rather, pardon me, Caitlin's the mom, Hunter's the son. I'm already getting into Positive Reflections. That's coming in like an hour. I need to just chill out. I'm excited to get to it. We do this on Mondays, stories that fill our hearts and fill our spirits. There's also a story that broke over the weekend. I wanted to talk to you. Before we get to our interview with Chicken Farmers of Canada, Lisa's going to join us, and we'll get into avian influenza. You know that there's 2 million birds. They're closing in on 2 million birds that are dead in Canada as a result of this. They've had to be culled, including in Alberta, almost half of them in our home province of Alberta. But a story reported by the National Post. I also wanted to get this going early in the show to get your takes on this. And this is the subject of an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll that I've posted on my official Twitter profile right now. We posted it just a few minutes ago, and we were already at 400 plus votes. And so I wanted to get to this. Let me tee it up before we show you the poll itself. The National Post reporting that Canadians' movements, and this is months back, including trips to the liquor store, trips to the pharmacy, trips to see your friend, or even for some of you staying home. For some of the Canadians that were, do I say surveilled? Maybe not. Tracked, that were logged. Their movements were logged. It was cross-border travel, in particular in the greater Vancouver area, like Abbotsford, where people cross the border to gas up or get their groceries, that sort of a thing. Well, Canadians were tracked via their mobile phones without their knowledge through the pandemic. So says a report sent to a parliamentary committee. This was sent by Parliamentary Secretary Adam Van Koeverden, former Canadian Olympic great, and we put in a request to speak with him. We hope to talk to him this week. Outbreak intelligence analyst BlueDot, this is the third party, this is the group BlueDot, prepared these reports using what they say is anonymized data for the Public Health Agency of Canada to help it understand travel patterns during the pandemic. So they say your phone number was not logged, your name was not logged, but your movement was. So they'd be able to say, for example, and I'm just making these ones up, but they would say over the course of this month of the pandemic, month X, trips to pharmacies doubled, or trips to these particular pharmacies tripled, or trips to liquor stores were way up, or trips to liquor stores were way down, or more people were staying home, or double the amount of people we expected actually met with friends or gathered in groups. They would say, well, we don't know if you're meeting with friends, but we would be able to tell that there was a group gathering. Now, the federal government provided these reports to the House of Commons Ethics Committee. There's ethics involved in this, obviously, as there are in most things. But the committee is probing the collection and the use of this data by the Public Health Agency. So says Damien Carrick, who's a Conservative MP out of Battle River Crowfoot. Questions remain about the specifics of the data provided, if Canadians' rights were violated, and what advice the Liberal government was given. Now, the Public Health Agency of Canada is saying, well, it's not about following individuals' trips. It's rather understanding whether the number of visits to specific locations have increased or decreased over time. They say, for example, all we would receive data-wise is the location of the point of interest, so like Ma and Pa's liquor store, and the number of visits for a certain day. Says the CEO of BlueDot, a fellow by the name of Cameron Khan, quote, our only goal is to help protect lives and livelihoods from infectious diseases, which requires intelligence about overall trends in populations. Goes on to say the data and analysis we provide are indicators, statistical summaries of anonymous device information, like the total number of devices traveling between the two cities. So the question is, does this raise red flags with you? Are you okay with being tracked? And I think the word fits because that's what it is. Are you okay with being tracked so long as it's kept anonymous? Do you believe or do you trust that it is kept anonymous? I don't think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to start thinking down the line about how other applications of this might play out. You know, for example, the ability of officials in relatively real time to track when, where, and how many people are gathering together in a specific circumstance. I don't think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to wonder if that might blow up in your face as a private citizen, to wonder if that might be an infringement on your rights. But then on the flip side, if it's a bunch of friends sitting around a campfire talking about this, some would probably say, yeah, but the Public Health Agency needs data. It needs to be able to make informed decisions. It would be valuable for public health officials to know if Canadians, way more Canadians, are going to the liquor store, right? There could be mental health implications there. There could be public health implications there. Perhaps public health messaging needs to be updated through the course of a pandemic to address some of these trends. So we're asking you about that in today's unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll, and you can find it on my profile at Ryan Jesperson. I've asked you, with Canadians traveling to pharmacies, liquor stores, and family gatherings tracked via their phones, are you cool with this? 546 votes right now with 23 hours left to go in it. 34% of you say yes, cool with it. Data's important. 39% of you say no, I'd feel violated. And 27% of you early in this poll say, I'm not sure how I feel. So I'm going to call that, for all intents and purposes, almost an even split across the board right now. Those of you that are concerned, those of you that aren't, and those of you that aren't quite sure. Now, on purpose, John, we ignored talking about this. We refrained from talking about this before the show because I wanted to pick your brain as we were putting the show in front of our friends, in front of Real Talkers today, with the information that you have in front of you. Would you be cool being tracked as part of this sample, or does it weird you out a little bit?
I think I'm in the middle. I think data is important, especially in this day and age, but it's always weird to see that Big Brother knows when you're buying a six-pack or when you're, you know what I mean, going to pick up your prescription. It's always going to make people feel weird, but I do believe in this day and age, we need more data. We need more information on everything, so.
I hope Lisa doesn't mind. Maybe I'll ask her when we go to her in just a second. This is not what she's here to talk about, but I just want to ask Canadians, I want to ask people how they feel. You can chime in. You know where to get us. If you'd rather take a little bit more time, go on at length, provide a few examples, give us something to chew on, our team. As we're putting future shows together, you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We'll talk avian influenza in just a quick second. I wanted to let you know how grateful I was to have a chance to meet so many of you at opening night at Northwest Fest. That was at Metro Cinema on Friday night. Real Talk was so so proud to present Who You Gonna Call, the story of Ray Parker Jr. It was great to have him in the house with us alongside filmmaker Fran Strine. Northwest Fest now officially kicked off. It runs through till May 15th, including some great shows you've got to make sure you check out. The full lineup right now at northwestfest.ca. Some of the films coming up this week include This Much I Know to Be True. It's a must-see for the many fans of Nick Cave. And of course, on May 14th, that's the closing night film, On the Fringe, celebrating Canada's love affair with fringe festivals. That'll get you in the mood for summer, for festival season. And tomorrow on Real Talk, you won't want to miss it, Tuesday, a special panel discussion, Love in the Time of Fentanyl. We're going to get into the opioid crisis, what it means, and what storytellers are doing to ensure that the public knows what's going on. Speaking of health and healthcare, our friends at Infinity Healthcare are in the business of home care. And not only are they using their personality matching service to ensure that clients are getting the best possible match when it comes to their home care provider, but they're also always hiring. If you go to the career opportunities menu at infinity-8.ca, you'll be able to see job postings for healthcare aides, LPNs, customer care navigators, and the Infinity Healthcare Ambassador. You can find all the details on contacting there or give them a call right now at 780-809-7884. And it is time to start getting serious about what your outdoor space is going to look like this summer. Eden Landscaping, in the business of bringing outdoor spaces to life. Their teams are already pedal to the metal, taking the designs they've been working on and turning them into reality. The best part about dealing with Eden Landscaping, you deal with them all the way through, from conception, design, the ideas, maybe your Pinterest board that you've been keeping, through till the last shovel leaves the lot. They're not out of there until you're completely satisfied. It's why so many of their customers refer them to their friends. That's Eden Landscaping at landscapeedmonton.ca. Well, this is one of the stories, certainly, that a lot of Canadians are keeping an eye on. Maybe not leading the news cycle, but it's very significant. The death toll when it comes to poultry as a result of avian influenza is just shy of 2 million birds, including 900,000 of them, almost half in Canada, an outbreak that has touched and impacted 23 farms in Alberta alone. Ontario also really seeing the impact of this avian flu. We're grateful that Lisa Bishop Spencer's agreed to join us this morning with Chicken Farmers of Canada. Lisa's also a certified crisis consultant that helps manage avian influenza here along with the National Poultry Group. So she's here working with Canadian poultry and egg sectors, making her Real Talk debut. Lisa, it's great to have you here this morning. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks for having me. I got to say that I'm a little bit jealous that you got a chance to meet Ray Parker Jr. because I would have loved to have been there.
Oh my gosh. Are you familiar with his story? He's like the Ghostbusters song guy, right? So he's telling us, like, the premise of the film is that, yeah, he wrote one of the most successful songs of all time. It was the number one song of 1984. It's obviously, I mean, it sold 10 million copies, the record did, in its first few months. But so much more. And when it comes to the other elements of career, when you sort of evaluate the breadth of somebody's work or their CV, like this guy was on tour when he was 17 with Stevie Wonder, Mick Jagger, the Rolling Stones. I mean, it's just an unbelievable story.
That's great.
Hey, let me ask you, I want to put you on the spot about something. This has nothing to do with avian influenza or flu, but you're just like a real-life human, and I'm a real-life human. This story we were talking about in the National Post, Canadians, without their knowledge, having their phones or their movement tracked by way of their phones. The Public Health Agency says it was kept anonymous, and it was in order to help them make public health decisions. Does something like that raise red flags with you, or is that something where you go, it's for the greater good, they need the information, I'm okay with it?
I mean, if it truly is anonymous, then I'm okay with it because I love data, and I think data is really useful in order to be able to make good, policy decisions. So, but there's that question: is it truly anonymous?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of wrestling with. I go, well, yeah, I mean, I can understand the value of the data. We need that. You and I are about to talk about data. And at the same time, I can see where this could be misused. I'm going to be curious to see where real talkers land on this. Let's talk about avian influenza. Avian flu is what everybody's referring to it as. It's obviously a huge deal down in the United States. The numbers are in the tens of millions of birds culled in Canada, closing in on 2 million right now, including almost 1 million in our home province of Alberta. Can you give us a lay of the land up to the minute on this Monday?
Not up to the minute. The last number that I had at the end of last week was about 1.8 million birds.
And so how does something like this happen? An outbreak that's hitting 23 farms right now. How does it get to this point? What do we know about how it started, how it was introduced, and how it's spreading?
So avian influenza is a disease that is experienced by birds. So what we know is that most of Canada is within what we call a migratory flyway. So those birds that are coming up from the US or from other parts of the world are now landing in Canada. So as a result of that, they're actually quite, it's a virulent virus this year, and it's being impacted by migratory birds as well. So those birds are getting sick, and those birds are spreading the virus to domestic poultry.
And how are farmers or how are producers recognizing it or seeing it on their farm? What happens, or is it a symptom that they see in one bird and then they have it tested?
Yeah, so pretty much what will happen is, as a part of their mandatory on-farm food safety program, the farmers will have to walk through the barn several times a day. And when they start to notice symptoms, so these birds have some pretty extreme symptoms, it's a very, very fast-moving virus. So a farmer will walk through the barn, notice either increased mortality in the barn or that these birds are showing symptoms. So he'll pick up the phone, or she'll pick up the phone, and they'll call their veterinarian, and their veterinarian will come, and then they'll say this might look like avian influenza, and then they'll take samples, and those samples will go to either a provincial lab, and then ultimately they'll be confirmed at the national CFIA lab in Winnipeg. If that virus comes back as positive, that's when we know for sure.
Is there are there comparisons to be made, or is there a contrast that you notice between now and what was hard to believe almost 20 years ago, back in 2004, when the world was also talking about this exact same thing?
Yeah, so the first avian influenza in Canada was in 1966, actually, and then we didn't see anything about it until 2004, when BC was almost, literally that industry was almost wiped out by avian influenza. The virus is different. It's a slightly different virus, and what we do know is that it's more pathogenic, it's more contagious among birds, and we're seeing, usually migratory birds can they'll have it in a low pathogenic form. So the migratory birds themselves won't get sick, but they can spread it to poultry. This year, what we've noticed is that it's highly pathogenic even among the migratory birds. So people are finding migratory birds dead, near a body of water, and those birds have tested positive as well. So this is the first time we've had avian flu in Canada off and on since 2004, every couple of years, usually in one province, affecting one or two farms. But what we've noticed now is that we have multiple viruses, or multiple farms with the virus across Canada. It's the first time we've seen it in more than one province at a time.
Really? So what are you reading into that, or when it comes to learnings, or sort of how the chicken farmers as an association or individually as entrepreneurs and business owners and producers? I mean, what are the implications there with regards to how you manage this?
Right. So that's what's interesting this time is that CFIA is telling us that there's not a lot of what we call lateral spread of the virus. So the virus isn't spreading from farm to farm. The virus is just coming in from wild birds. So that's really interesting. That points to the fact that a lot of the biosecurity measures that we've taken into account on farm are working, right? But the issue is that what do we do about these wild birds?
Yeah, and so what do you do about the wild birds? This is avian influenza. I've been reading, and I'm not a doctor, but I've been reading that this is something that maybe humans won't directly be impacted by. But if you have wild birds dying, and then scavengers are eating those carcasses, I mean, does this become a bigger problem that spreads outside certain species?
I'm not really sure about the epidemiology of it. What I do know is that in order to catch avian influenza, you have to be in some pretty intense contact with those birds. right? So if you are sort of just a person walking down the street next to a barn, then that's not going to be an issue. If you're coming across a dead wild bird, don't pick it up, call somebody. That would be my best advice. And then I think that we just have to bear in mind that, this isn't a human health issue. This is a flock health issue. This is an animal care issue. We want to make sure that we try to keep it out. So basically the motto that farmers live by between, when avian influenza time happens, which is in the spring and in the fall, the motto is, if it's in, keep it in, and if it's out, keep it out.
What does this mean, do you think, for supply with regards to what Canadians can expect on availability of protein, of chicken, essentially, and also, sort of longer term grocery costs as well? Things like this can oftentimes have an impact at the actual till. What do we know at this point?
So we get a lot of these questions lately, in particular, just because the inflation and all of these costs that are coming into play. But the one advantage that we have in the Canadian poultry and egg industry is, in fact, the supply management system. Now, I know people have a lot of opinions about that system, but I really do want to point to the fact that the ability and the flexibility of the supply management system to adjust supply is tremendous. I'm going to give you two examples. The first one is back in 2004. In 2004, we had avian influenza in BC, right? So I'm just going to talk from a chicken perspective, a chicken meat perspective. But all of those birds were either culled or they went to market as usual. But then the farmers were not allowed to restock their barn for a period of time. And when that happened, that was 4% of the chicken market that was going to be left unmet. So what did we do? Well, we were able to adjust production and increase it in the rest of the country and then fill that gap. In contrast, when COVID hit, now what's important to remember there is that 40% of chicken production in Canada is destined for food service. All of a sudden, we had all of these restaurants that were shut down. They couldn't offer any food service at all. So we were able to adjust production downwards in order to not oversupply the market with chicken that would then go bad and would lead to food waste. So by having that ability to contrast and to adjust production, that helps a lot. So we have to remember that it's not all one species of bird that's being impacted by avian flu. It's being spread out, relatively evenly among all of the commodities. So the fact that we have chicken producers in every single province leads to the fact that we can adjust production if we need to. We're not there yet. It's only, of the 23 in Alberta, I don't know how many exactly are chicken, but it's not all 23, right? So there are other farmers that can increase their supply if we need to in order to fill that gap. So supply is not an issue right now. So there shouldn't be any impact on price because of supply of avian influenza.
Lisa, one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to you is, and I told you I wanted to ask you about this reporting in The Guardian, which we talked about last week on the show, that a U.S. egg factory, per the report on the headline in The Guardian, roasting alive 5.3 million chickens in an avian flu cull. And it describes the method they used, where essentially they shut off ventilation and cranked up the heat. And the description of how these chickens died was rather appalling. And it was interesting to hear some people say, yeah, it's chickens, like, meh. And other people kind of went, yeah, we don't know much about where our food comes from or how animals are treated. And if we did, we'd all be vegans. And then other people said, well, we should have room for conversation around ethics in production. And I heard from a lot of producers and farmers, two of them who I'll be talking to right after I talk to you, that said, hey, every once in a while, there's a horrific story that comes out of ag that kind of makes everybody look pretty bad. But the reality is it's not the type of thing that's happening with every operation. What can Canadians know, or what can you tell us about culling methods in Canada and how the ethical treatment of animals factors into decisions that are made along these lines? If you can comment on the story out of Iowa, I'd appreciate it too.
Sure. I can just tell you that in Canada, ventilation shutdown is not an approved method of culling birds in Canada. That's the first thing. A lot of people don't know that. But at this point, CFIA has said no to ventilation shutdown as a culling method. So right now, when birds are culled, they're culled with CO2 in the barn, not even a foam. It's just CO2 that's pumped into the barn, and then the birds go to sleep, and then they pass away. And I think that, like I said, a lot of people don't know that, but what we do know is that CFIA has said, no, that's not the method of culling that we're going to use at this point.
So how much more difficult does that make your job when a story like this one breaks in The Guardian?
I think it's important that people understand that, everybody's trying to manage this virus as much as possible. I mean, the fact is that, the ultimate goal has to be to eliminate the virus, to eradicate it completely. And we have to do what's right by the people and by the birds, and that's very difficult to manage. The farmers don't really have a say in sort of how that happens, right? Because as soon as the virus is detected on a farm, it's what we call a reportable disease. So it goes to the OIE, which is basically the World Health Organization for agriculture. So when it goes to the OIE, CFIA, automatically takes on the responsibility of ensuring that those birds are culled ethically, and that they are composted ethically, and that the barns are cleaned and disinfected.
How do you look at this timeline-wise? Like, is it possible to put a timeline on when poultry producers will be able to sort of put this behind them, or right now is it such an active type dynamic, an active type situation that it's tough to know how much longer this might be a problem?
It is hard to know because, usually we'll see, like I said, 2 or 3 cases in one province, and then it kind of just goes away, because what we've learned since 2004 has been so valuable for farmers to be able to impact or to implement on their farms. So what's the difference is that now we're dealing with a very, very virulent strain that it's in multiple provinces. So that becomes very difficult to manage at a national and a local level. So in terms of when it'll be over, I don't know, and no one really knows. But we are starting to see a little bit of a leveling out in the east, because we don't forget we had cases in Newfoundland in December and in Nova Scotia in January, February, and we haven't had any repeats of those. So what we're hoping is that as the birds keep migrating and as things settle down, that we're going to crest, and then we're going to start seeing a drop off.
Lisa Bishop-Spencer joining us from Chicken Farmers of Canada. Thanks for spending part of your Monday morning with us, Lisa. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. You can let us know what you think about this. We'll talk to Jeff and Coralee Nonay. Interesting that supply management came up, because we're about to talk to a couple of dairy farmers as well. And that's obviously, these are the two industries that are most impacted by and governed essentially by, that might not be the right phrase to use, but supply management a factor there. And I know that is a controversial one. So we appreciate your take. Talk at ryanjesperson.com, our email address. You can get to us anytime. I also want to check in. We've got a great conversation going with our Real Talkers joining us live this morning about the so-called, I don't think let me say it is disingenuous for me to use the word surveillance, but the tracking of Canadians by cell phones, either crossing the border, gathering in groups, going to the liquor store, the pharmacy, staying at home through the pandemic to inform public health decisions, and some great conversations, some great contributions going there. And I want to get to those in just a second. Before we talk to the Nonays, let me remind you that Sherwood Dodge has the best selection of the most popular truck in Canada right now, and that is the Ram 1500. If your family is gearing up, getting ready to head out to the great outdoors, perhaps May long weekend is your family's official and traditional kickoff to camping or hiking season. Maybe you've got some angling that's going to go on. Maybe you're going to be heading out, pulling a trailer to that lot that you're going to raise your kids at every single summer. You got big dreams, but you got to get a rig to get you out there. Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge, you can shop them online right now. They're pre-owned and they're brand new trucks, Jeeps, and Dodge vehicles. Or, of course, you can go visit them in person as well. Make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you to St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. Park Power knows how important it is to deal with a friendly local utilities provider. That's why more and more people are getting their internet, electricity, and natural gas services from the company that is still independently and family owned. You can compare rates online right now. We recommend, I do personally right now, to get ahead of this volatility, the fixed rate options. You can get all the details online, and when you bring your business to Park Power, make sure you use the promo code 2022-Real Talk. It's going to get you $70 off your first bill. That is no joke. I'm hearing Ray Parker Jr. right now. That ain't no joke. He said, I ain't afraid no ghosts, but I am afraid of electrical bills that are way too high. Canada's online university is Athabasca University, and right now, more than 40,000 Canadians from coast to coast to coast are learning and preparing themselves right now for a competitive job market, a new landscape job market. Athabasca University, one of Canada's highest enrolled universities, because it's so convenient. You register based on your plan. And if your plan changes, your availability, the time you have to commit on any given week or month to your studies, you just adjust it. What other post-secondary institution gives you that flexibility? I mean, the answer is none of them. You can learn more at athabascau.ca. The programs, the courses, the admissions process, and of course, some of the exciting research that's going on there. That was a great conversation last week with Kelsey Young that joined us.
Yeah.
We're talking about destigmatizing fat. We'll find all different angles on cool stuff going on at Athabasca University. Again, at athabascau.ca. A report in the National Post this weekend about this third party, this agency that the Canadian government, specifically the Public Health Agency of Canada, tapped into. It's called BlueDot, to glean information on how Canadians were essentially behaving, not in like a kindergarten type of way, like how is your behavior, but what were our patterns showing? Where were we going? Were we going to the pharmacy more often, the liquor store more often, crossing the border more often, staying home or going out, gathering with friends more frequently? The data kept anonymous, so says BlueDot, but it's raising questions about how people feel about being tracked. And so we're asking you in today's unofficial unscientific Twitter poll on my account at Ryan Jesperson, 792 votes as we speak. It's been up for just about an hour. Are you cool with this? And the numbers are holding true, John. About 35%, let's call it 1 in 3, say I'm cool with it. Data's important. 38%, so pretty much the same amount of folks say, no, I'm not cool with it. I'd feel violated. And then 27% say, I'm not sure how I feel.
Yeah, and I like this comment that's coming through on the Real Talk YouTube chat here. It says, the concept of privacy is perceived differently by generations. That's so true, because elder generations, the boomers, they're kind of scared of losing privacy. And then you've got Gen Z and Gen X, and they're kind of like used to it.
Not just used to it, but
it's part of their life.
They volunteer the information. I think that's a really important point that was made there. You're right, because a lot of people, you're tagging not just where you are or where you're going, when you're going to be there, who you're with. I mean, it's
you're
sort of
showing
become
photos of you there,
right? Sort of, it's become part of this like social media. Do we call it like a disclosure culture, or something like that? James says, "Let's be very clear." He's all caps, so I wanted to do it justice. He says the government bought this data from the same sources that track you every single day and is available to thousands of other sources. It's only scary because it's the government, says James. Gilles says this has been happening for years. Google does this on your cell phone every single day. He says check out Google Maps and Google My Business. And Gilles' right.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that means that people are cool with it or comfortable with it. The more time we spend thinking about it, maybe the more it would freak us out.
Yeah.
Something's not necessarily just okay because it's been happening for a long time. I'm more curious to know if it creeps you out a little bit when it does happen.
But we give up certain, rights to privacy. Corrine here says if you have a debit card, a credit card, a phone, you're being tracked. I mean, that's just the way of the world today.
Yeah, Ashley says, honestly, my phone is always listening and tracking me anyway. Says I'm not concerned about it at all. Ashley says we have Google Home and Alexa, and I know they are always listening.
Somebody also commented if you're commenting in the Real Talk chat right now, you're also being tracked. So
yeah, well, we've got a whole team behind the scenes that's putting together files on all of you. Be very afraid. Hawes says it's a huge overstep. Yeah, Tracy, same sort of a thing, John, you just brought up, says we've been tracked with rewards cards, telecommunication devices, and to a degree, government apps. Brenda says, think of the satellites that are flying above us all the time, gathering information. Darla says it's none of their business. Jim following up says, I trust the government 1,000 times more than I trust Mark Zuckerberg. You think Mark Zuckerberg's ever surprised at how much information people agreed to give him in startup? I mean, if you think about it.
I don't think so. That's probably part of the reason he's doing this. It's funny though, like we want we want our privacy, but then we also want to see like our house on Google and see our nice
we want the
lawn,
convenience,
courtcy of Eden Landscaping, looking all good in the summer, right? So
no, it's true. And I, just the other day I was sending some flowers. Maybe a happy Mother's Day to those of you that celebrated. And for those of you that it's a really tough day, our thoughts are with you as well. I saw messages along both of those lines, people posting publicly yesterday and sharing where their hearts were at. And some of you, your hearts were full, and some of you, your hearts are broken. And days like that, I think community means more than anything. And so today was a big day for a lot of people. But to bring this back, I was sending my mom some flowers, and I was talking to the to the person that was going to deliver them to this flower shop down in Calgary. I realized I said I know, like, I can drive to their house all the time and everything. I'm pretty sure I know the address, but I just want to double check it. Like, I didn't have the postal code, not that I needed it, but I just wanted to double check it. And so what did I do? I went to Google Maps, and of course I could see the photo of their house, and I go, "Yep, that's their house.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the correct address."
Yeah.
But at the same time, someone would go, "What are you doing snapping photos of my home? What are you doing posting photos of my house online?" You know, I mean,
It's a double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword.
Sometimes you're okay with it, and then other times you're like, why is my house perfectly pictured on here? But
yeah,
we've learned to live with it, right? So
Haas says just because people are okay with it doesn't mean it's right. Tracy says not all Gen Z and millennials share freely. Many have clamped down on social media and clamped down on
That's
their phones
true
as well.
as well,
And I'm
yeah.
sure probably more maybe because of the conversations like this that we have, where all of a sudden you realize, you go, yeah, wait a second, that's not something that occurred to me.
Mm-hmm. And I think during the pandemic that came out a lot too, because people realized they were being watched, their actions were being, scrutinized and things like that. And I can understand that as well.
Yeah, like
You
I
want to
don't.
kind of stay off. I haven't posted much since the pandemic began, not because I'm out there, flaunting the rules, but just people are they scrutinize you very much for your actions these days.
And
So-
I don't consider myself to be, I'm not a paranoid type person. As a matter of fact, I'm probably not as paranoid as I should be with regards to like information that's available or information that's trackable or things like that. But at the same time, stories like this do get me thinking. And I think it's important to at least think about it and talk about it. So it's at least on our radar, right? So it's something I think it's important whether or not wherever you land on something to at least talk about it, right? Pascali says if you're scared that you're being tracked, then don't have a phone. All apps track. Just stay home with your tinfoil hat on. I mean, I don't know. Is it tinfoil hat? Is it? I don't know. Are our next guests ready to rock and roll?
They are ready to go.
Let me ask them this. They're not showing up to talk about this, but I don't think they're going to mind at all. Jeff and Coralee Nonay farm together at Lakeside Farmstead in beautiful Sturgeon County, Alberta. They're in the dairy business. They're in the cheese business. They're in the Wagyu Holstein Cross beef business. They do a whole bunch to keep their fellow Canadians well fed, and it's great to have them here on the show. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for making time for us today.
Morning.
Morning, Ryan.
You've heard our conversation here talking about Canadians' movement being tracked anonymously. So says the group doing it. BlueDot, Canada's public health agency, says nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. We just want to make smart data-informed decisions. It seems to be split. The respondents to our unofficial survey on Twitter, people that do care about it, people that don't care about it, and people that aren't sure how they feel about it. Coralee, do you have a gut instinct on this one? How do you feel about the story?
Oh, I'd say not sure, but I was a nurse for 21 years and I know a lot of research, statistics and everything is based upon numbers. So I get what they would be doing, what they would be looking for. So to get answers, sometimes you need to know things.
Jeff, are you the type to like lock down your phone and shut down your tracking, or are you probably being tracked more than you realize?
I think I do shut down my phone and avoid allowing all the apps to access my location. Like that's a constant battle. But at the same time, we're tiny here in Canada and we worry about it. In larger countries, the notion, you talk to people coming out of Asia, they're just like, who cares? I'm not that important. Track me. Like, so what if I go get a cup of coffee? And I think the aggregate data is something that's real for the public. I know in agriculture, to kind of bend it over towards that side, huge concerns over data being collected. All of our tractors come nowadays with, JD Link, the John Deere Link system, and they want to track. So when you're combining in the field and harvest is coming in and they know what the yields are. And, I've always wondered, not so much from the privacy standpoint, but from who are they selling that data to and why am I not getting paid for it? Like, are the Chinese knowing how big the crop is before I get a chance to market it kind of idea? So from that side, it's going to be collected. It's just who has the right to my information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there's talk about that in our live chat as well. People talking about the monetized nature of this and how valuable data is for people that want to target certain groups, certain demographics, or even like you said, with regards to market understanding, there could be huge implications. The reason why I wanted to invite both of you here, and I'm grateful that you've agreed to do it, we talked to Jessica Scott-Reid, a freelance journalist last week, about these chicken culls, these poultry culls that are happening in the U.S. and elsewhere, including right here in Alberta due to avian influenza. I want to be clear, you guys aren't poultry farmers, but Coralee, well, both of you have been great friends of the show, and you started to comment on our conversation, and then all hell broke loose. And people started talking about you as a farmer and a farming family. You guys dairy farmers, of course, predominantly. And it got me to thinking, you know, the whole point of Real Talk is to plant these seeds of discussion and then to allow them to germinate and grow, and to have conversations where people represent different perspectives and to make us think about one angle and then think about the other. And so I'm grateful that you've agreed to join us. It's obvious why many people are upset to hear that, you know, more than 5 million birds in an Iowa facility are essentially roasted to death inside barns where the ventilation's shut off and the temperature goes up. And we just talked to Lisa Bishop-Spencer from Chicken Farmers of Canada, who clarified to us that that's not an approved message in Canada. But it's easy to understand why people are upset. And at the same time, it's easy to understand why producers and farmers like yourselves go, gosh, this is a tough look. This is a bad look for everybody and doesn't necessarily represent how we roll in our operation. How are you processing some of the controversy that unfolded on social media after you chimed in on my conversation with Jessica last week?
Well, I guess when I chimed in, I kind of expected there would be pushback, because the pushback by activists is always to make it as sensational, as heart-wrenching, as terrible as it can be, which it was for us personally. So it was devastating. Like after our farm fire, it was really hurtful when someone said, I can't believe what people are posting on the articles and the news. And I started to read comments, and it was like a trauma on top of a trauma. And I get where people are coming from. I think nobody likes to see death, you know, in animals, agriculture especially. So yeah, it was to be expected, but it still hurts every time.
Let's provide some background for people that maybe aren't familiar with the story. I'm never going to forget that morning back in 2017. Jeff, you and I were actually slated to do an interview on my terrestrial radio show at the time, and you sent me a text message, I think an hour or two before we were supposed to talk, letting me know that you weren't going to be able to do the interview because your farm was, I mean, it was a nightmare in real life. Your barn had caught fire with a whole bunch of your animals inside, more than 100 of your cows. Obviously a devastating occurrence for your family, for your operation. And I saw, and I have seen in the years subsequent how it's impacted you all. But it obviously did open up your farm for criticism, didn't it? From people that are already critical of relatively large farming operations. Jeff, how did you process not just the impact of that fire on your family and your organization, but what it did to some of the public dialogue, including some of the criticism of your operation right up until just this past week?
Yeah, it's forever part of our history. And it's a good thing we had some of this discussion and brought up that last week, because otherwise it's still raw. You know, those emotions are right under the surface for both of Coralee and I, and I imagine for all of the staff that are still with us from then, and even the new staff. You know, the farm has moved on.
And our kids.
I don't think we can even really understand how our kids processed all of that. It's impacting our lives forever. So by and large, I mean, the noisy people that want to be critical and take an accident and a disaster, that happens. We're not the only dairy farm to lose a barn and to a fire. Ours was particularly devastating because of when it occurred and the number of animals that were lost. Others fare a little bit better just by luck of when things can happen. So, you know, I don't know. We're heading to 5 years on in this thing, Ryan, and I don't know that you can ever really truly understand how it impacted us personally, and the way people see us, you know, either with strength because we picked up the pieces and moved on, or more critically if they think that animals should never be used for agricultural purposes.
Yeah, let me, and I want to go there in our conversation about the future of farming and the future of food and a lot of the movements, and people have valid perspectives on how they feel about a lot of things. And the purpose of this conversation is not to declare somebody to be right and somebody to be wrong. I want people to feel like they're hearing perspectives from across the spectrum. They can make their own decisions. But Coralee, here's an example of what you posted. You posted this on May 4th following our interview. You said, "No one cares more about the animals on their farms than the farmers. It's not all about money, but of course it has an impact. Our farm fire was absolutely devastating to our family and our farm family. We still talk about it to this day." And you say Canada has the strictest, most regulated rules under CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And someone by the name of K. Chrystia responded to you and said, "The reason you care for the animals is because of the money they bring you. If they didn't bring you profit, I doubt the story would be the same. It's not only the regulations that need to change, it's the way that humans view animals. Despite your love for them, you still view them as objects." So how would you respond to that with regards to how you view your animals? Like, number one, it is a business. It's a for-profit business, and everybody knows why the cows are there and ultimately what's going to happen to the cows. But how do you, as a family and as farmers, how do you approach it? And what is your relationship like with the animals? Is it, like Facebook might say, is it complicated?
I think you know what. There's only one day, and on our farm for the animals, there's only one bad day. That's our goal. And that for me, you know, when with the beef program we have is every second Thursday, there's a few animals that get taken to market. I take them to market. You know, that's something that I've done from the beginning, and it's real and it's hard. The guys at the abattoir, you know, bless them for doing their job, because I wouldn't be able to have the attachment to the animals that I do, and then do their job as well. It's hard enough just bringing them to market. So, you know what, I think depending on the farm and what it is, there is and needs to be a degree of separation, because of the critical, you know, how critical people are about that nature of the business, and it becomes more in the forefront. However, humans have consumed animals for a long time. Animal protein is a very important part of the entire food system. That's the message I sent you when we kind of, you know, started that we should have more discussion, because the reality is you can't just replace that protein and those calories with vegetables and fruits and plant-based diets, certainly not very easily and not very well. So there's a lot of upcycling in the food system. There's, you know, byproducts of all kinds of things that we need to eat. And some of it gets controversial just in that regard. So palm oil is in the majority of products that you're going to go find in your grocery store shelves. That's the oil base that, you know, a lot of manufacturers use in cooking and in preparing, you know, whatever, cookies, pastries, etc. A byproduct of that is palm fat, which is upcycled and consumed by animals, you know, across the world. And we got into that trouble with hard butter and you know, all these things can cascade. But it shows you that everywhere around the world, Florida has citrus pulp that gets used in their dairy industry. You know, wheat midds and things from processing wheat to feed humans is upcycled into the food system and used by the feed mills and returned back to animal agriculture. And it's a really critical part. It's a massive part of how the food system works and why it's efficient.
Coralee, do you see, I mean, I see sort of two trends. And I wouldn't say that either of them are necessarily bad. Number one, I think people are starting to celebrate more local producers. They want to know, it's that sort of idea of like from farm to fork, and they want to know where everything came from. They want to see the farmers' faces. They want to know, I mean, you know, my cousin, they grew carrots for a long time. I remember when they got their family photo on the bag of carrots in the grocery store, it was huge for them because they take such pride in their operation. I know it's the same for your family and what you do with your cheese and your beef and all your other dairy products and everything else. So there's that trend. And then there's the trend of people that are starting to rethink their diets, that are starting to rethink, you know, how they interact with planet Earth, and are starting to think about the footprints they leave. And that is impacting their diet, and it is impacting what they buy and where they buy it from. So Coralee, how do you process it? You as a family, and you guys are entrepreneurs, how do you process, how do you respond to what the market's looking for, to what consumers are looking for, and also how do you get ahead of some of the objections that people have? You know, you must pay pretty close attention to what the general public is indicating in the context of how we eat and how we get it.
Yeah, I just want to circle back real quick. And, they say that our animals are objects. They're not objects. I drive by, the kids drive by. If we walk by, we talk to the girls, we talk to the boys. They have names. They're very curious. They come see us. Luke's favorite cow is Daisy, and he gets her special treats, and she literally stampedes over to see him. So it's like Jeff said, we try to give them the best care and nurturing and that we can until that one bad day. And it is really hard to reconcile that for certain people. We're not bad humans because we are in agriculture. We're not terrible humans. And some of the names they call us for being in agriculture, especially dairy, is like just so skewed. So I believe in choice, like everything. There's a lot in the news right now about choice, women's health, all sorts of things. And the reality is, when I looked up statistics of vegans, it's about 1 to maybe 5% worldwide, different percentages in different countries. So are we okay with taking away people's food choice? And one article I even read is that the impacts of veganism actually affects the poorest countries. Like, are we okay with that? Like, the countries that have the highest number of vegans, I would say, are richer countries. So I think that should be part of the conversation.
Huh. So do you, like, with regards to how you plan out your what you invest in as an operation, the direction that you take, the strategy, even some of the things that you've taken on. I mean, opening a cheesery, for example, which I know took a big investment. Obviously, you're going to want to be looking at trends. You're going to have to a certain degree, forecast where food production is going, including with regards to consumer demand over the next 20 to 30 years. And I'd be curious to pick both your brains on this, where you see the industry going or how you see it evolving over the next, let's say right up until the time that maybe your kids take over the family farm. Where do you see it going, Jeff?
So I saw a little clip recently where Elon, Coralee will go grab that. Elon Musk said he doesn't have a business plan. I don't know. I guess you're right. Probably underlying for us is our farm connecting to consumers, and that gives us a lot of pride. We enjoy that connection. I think it's really important. And that's been something the industry's talked about since I got into farming, and we've kind of led forward with that. So the cheese plant is a good way for consumers to connect and have product more directly from our farm. The beef was the initial step forward into that. And just having that awareness and that dialogue, everything we do have the consumer in mind, what they want. We've got a lot of strong personalities on the farm as far as where the future goes and how we crop and what the opportunities are, and trying to figure out as we move along. There's so many gains that have been made across all sectors, but I know, you can Google quickly and find that dairy, our carbon footprint is among the lowest in the world for dairy production. We continue to get more efficient from crop production, how we feed our animals, working with nutritionists, genetics. Part of the barn fire story that spun forward was an investment in higher genetic animals and doing flush work and propagating the most efficient possible animals for our farm, from the components to feed efficiency. So there's technology and science behind it. There's, dirt on your boots, getting out in the field and working from that angle and figuring out how to try and do things better. I mean, by and large, the plows are parked. We're not tilling soil. I don't think the average consumer really understands how much things have changed on the farm, how much things have advanced, and how much that's protected us, even in the most extreme conditions of heat waves and variability in weather, and being able to get a crop off every year at harvest time. In my mind, I know how fine the line is between starvation and getting a crop off. And it blows me away that on a global scale, we seem to, whether we're snowed under or frozen in or fighting rain after rain in the fall, or whatever the case is, a drought and a shitty crop, that it does end up with enough food to go around.
Coralee, do you hope your kids continue the farming tradition? Do you think they will? Are you already having those conversations as a family?
We are having those conversations because right now it's just Jeff and I. in the business running it. And I think for both of us, we have questioned, do we want our kids to have this stress? We've expanded, we also have seed potatoes, talking about sustainability. We have a composting project that captures carbon, but of course, because we do it ourselves, it's not large enough to actually get credits for. And I think that's sad, because I think everything everyone does towards sustainability, climate change, agriculture, it's all the little things that can add up to big things and change for our future, for all of our futures. So I think we're still not sure where we want the farm to go for our children.
Well,
it's a lot.
Agriculture is, the farms get bigger, the capital investment, the capital tied up, the return on that capital is, from a cash flow standpoint, extremely challenging across the industry. A lot of the wealth is built on inflating assets, not so much on the ability of the business to generate cash. So those are huge concerns as you go down that path, and you see that most farms continue to get bigger. Our mix is quite diversified, which comes with a lot of challenges. It's not as easy to grow and get large and compete with neighbors who are maybe a little more focused on one specific part of the industry. So I don't know. I guess that's being very open about. They're going to have to be passionate about it. They're going to have to want to show up and love agriculture. And I think the appreciation side is there. I think most consumers like us, it's hard to know how to approach and when to approach, but you get the odd experience in the city where people, realize you're from ag, comment, appreciate what you're doing. And those things go a long ways.
I wanted to read this. People can check out lakesidefarmstead.com. That's where they can learn more about your cheese and your beef program and all the cool stuff that you've been doing over the past number of years. But this is from Twyla Campbell, who's certainly one of the more recognizable food writers across the country. She says, I'll keep repeating what I believe to be true and what I've said for the past 15 years in my food writing. We need to support the farmers and ranchers who care about the land on which they humanely raise their animals. We need to encourage and support the cheesemakers and bakers, the crop growers, the millers, butchers, and independent restaurants whose chefs source directly from conscientious producers. We need food artisans to create food that's made with love and passion and care and devotion. Probably not an accident that you put that up on your website. And there's words that jump out at me that are pretty obvious, right? Like ranchers who care about the land, farmers who humanely raise their animals. Coralee, I feel like I see it on your face that's resonating with you right now.
Well, yeah, like we put a lot of work into that website. And if people look through the website, it is about honoring the history and the heritage of Jeff and I are both from family farms, both had grandparents that immigrated. And, people like to call us factory farms and that. And the reality is that most farms aren't like that. Especially in Canada, like I still consider us small, even though we are able to support a lot of staff and local community people have jobs here that through our business, we support them. So for us, it's hugely about community. And Twyla's quote that she gave us to put on the website, it was bang on. Like I read that and I couldn't stop smiling because it epitomizes everything that we stand for on our farm. And she's been here numerous times, eaten food, shared meals with us, toured the farm. She's just a fantastic advocate for food.
And I think what Twyla alludes to there, and it's a good message across when it comes to food and a lot of what we want to offer people that come out to the farm and can see it. And, even if they only experience that once or twice a year, it's an experience. And that's what food should be. And it involves knowing where the food comes from, the realities of what that means when it comes to animal agriculture. And I've never had people come out to the farm and tour around and not be blown away by pretty much everything, just the details, the care, the staff, the way everybody interacts. And it enhances the experience, it enhances the quality of food, and it enhances, that life experience. How many things do we do in life where that's a massive part of it? You have a wedding, you have a meal, and sharing food and having that experience with people is a big part of our culture and our life.
Carissa says, thanks for what you do and how you do it. She says, we're trying to eat better, and that includes animal protein, avoiding sugar, and avoiding overly processed foods where possible. Dwayne just says, without farmers, we don't eat. And I like this one from Deborah. We'll offer this to you in closing. Deborah says, I love these interviews with honest, down-to-earth folks, plus they have a Beatles photo in the background. So you scored points with Deborah this morning. Jeff and Coralee Nonay, you can find more about what they're doing at Lakeside Farmstead. LakesideFarmstead.com. It's great to see both your faces. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So those are some real-life producers. That's a family farm operation. Another perspective to add into the mix when it comes to conversations about what we eat, how it's grown, how it's raised, how it's killed, how it's marketed. We never want to shy away from these types of conversations. I appreciate everything that we're seeing here on the live chat. Lots of chat.
Lots of chat.
Johnny, you've obviously got your own perspective.
I knew you were going to go.
Well, no, and I just wanted, because, you and your wife, what do you call it, live the vegan lifestyle? You guys are vegans, whatever. My brother lives a vegan lifestyle. So
yeah, we are. I like to call myself plant-based, and one of the reasons is because of all the just the hatred and the divisiveness and just that came along with saying vegan. I made a choice years ago, about 5, to remove myself kind of from. I kind of told myself the rest of my life, the other half of my life, I'm gonna kind of remove myself from as much suffering as I can. So that's why we made the decision to do it. But at the same time, animals suffer, but so do humans, and that suffering is real too. And farmers, like you saw them, I talked to them off camera over the weekend. These aren't bad people. And I don't believe that farmers are bad people. And so my wife especially is more passionate than I am, but we try to counteract everything we do. So although we don't buy meat from farmers, you better believe we're at the farmers market every weekend. We go to the local, setups at the farms. We buy the crappy looking vegetables because we know those ones are being thrown out in the garbage first. We're trying to do everything we can, and we're trying to talk to people. And that's the biggest thing. Like we can't silence people and yell at people and shut them down just because of our opinions. I like what Coralee said about, there's still questions about how veganism affects the environment. And that's true. We got to keep talking. We got to keep, letting people have their opinions and voicing them and not shutting people down. So I'm not perfect. I'm continuing to learn every day. That's what I'm doing.
Man,
I'm just trying to do the best I can.
I love that perspective. And I can't stand hearing that Jeff and Coralee have people piling on them for the barn fire and saying really horrific things about that. And it also really troubles me to hear that people are piling on folks that choose to shape their diet a certain way or choose to live a certain lifestyle. Like it's really, quite frankly, not anyone's business what you eat.
It's hard because I ate meat for 30 years.
Do you think it's just, do people feel threatened, or why do you think is this, like people kind of roll their, people always say, how do you tell if somebody's a vegan? Just ask them, they'll tell you, whatever the joke is. But at the same time, like, so what? So that person wants to make that choice from the, so what?
Yeah.
In so many ways, as if I choose to eat prime rib 5 times a week. So what?
It's hard because people are so passionate and things are so divisive these days. But again, I'll just stress that we need to let everyone in on the conversation. Everyone needs to be able to talk and just keep learning, keep getting more info and trying to live the best way you can. And it is like, the way I'm living perfect? Probably not. But I'm just trying to do what I think works best to center myself and make me feel the best. And that's all I can do. Right. So,
but that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Right. Like when my brother made a big evolution over the course of several years, and I won't sit here and speak for him, but he's made changes to his diet, and he's he's living that vegan lifestyle now too, plant-based. He would probably prefer maybe to say as well.
And not to reveal too much, but like your family, farmers.
Yeah.
Like,
So for sure.
That's a big thing for him, right?
Yeah. I mean, I always joke, my wife really loves oat milk for her lattes, and my family's a big dairy farming family. And I always say to her, babe, can we at least have, let's at least make sure we have some cow's milk in the fridge at all times, just as an homage to the family. I prefer cow's milk, doesn't matter. But really, when it all comes down to it, I asked my brother about it because I'm curious furious, not in a confrontational way, far from it. And for him, it's just like he feels better.
Yeah.
It makes him feel better. And I don't think, and I think like all I hope with this show and the goal of this show, and if this, if we accomplish anything with Real Talk, it's to have meaningful, challenging conversations in the gray zone, right? Nothing, some things are black and white, sure, but most things are shades of gray.
Yeah.
And to not just tell someone that, we believe that their perspective's junk because it doesn't align with ours. That's not how you run a talk show. And I don't believe that it's how people should conduct their relationships.
And I respect you for that. And that's why I'm here. Like, I don't eat meat. I know you eat a ton of meat. Well, not a ton, but you know what I mean? But like,
more than you do anyway. Yeah.
I know people are going to jump on me when they say you're not removing yourself from the suffering. I know that. Okay. I drive a car. I know it affects the environment. I have a cell phone with plastic in it. Like, I'm just trying to do the best I can. And I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's the right way. And I would never tell people this is how you should live only. But, at the same time, I am passionate about it. And again, my wife is way more passionate. I'm sure she's listening right now, and I get home.
We've got to get your wife on the show sometime.
She's
I would
very,
love to have her
very
on the
knowledgeable.
show.
She's taught me so much. And like I said, we counteract things. We're not. We realize farmers, like that person said on the chat line today, farmers, if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be alive, literally. So we try to go out and support them in other ways as much as we can to counteract and balance things out.
We had an amazing opportunity over the course of the weekend. Speaking of better understanding where people are coming from and seeking to understand, that's like, I feel like I want to base my whole life on that idea, seeking to understand. Of course, Sunday was the Kentucky Derby. And I don't know if everybody watched it. I'm not like a huge horse racing fan. I'm not obsessed with it, but I sure think it's cool. And I don't know if you had a chance to check it out, Real Talkers, but on Sunday, the Kentucky Derby, the 148th running, wound up being the second biggest upset of all time. The second biggest upset in almost 150 years. Now, I had heard on The Hedge, which is the new show we're putting out with Andrew Walker, The Hedge, that Messier, check this out, Johnny, I've got it up on the screen right now. Messier was the horse we wanted. It had an Alberta connection. But instead, it was this horse that came out of nowhere. Rich Strike was not even registered, was not even in the race, not even to be run until a couple of days before. Rich Strike sneaks its way in at 80-1 odds and comes out of nowhere at 80-1 to win the 148th running of the Kentucky Derby. Absolutely bananas.
Who got rich? That's what I want to know. And I'm sure, like, thehedgepod.com, go there now. We're going to be talking about this.
Yeah.
Because I know we don't talk about, horse racing a lot, but I'm sure Andrew Walker is banging his head on the table.
We're all like, why didn't we put $50?
Yeah.
I know why we didn't, because the average, this is the second time that something this big has happened in almost 150 years. That's why. But there was one person somewhere that put 10 grand on Rich Strike.
And maybe instead of putting the 10 grand on one next time, just spread it out, because you never know who's going to win.
Hedge your bets.
Like, if you bet $100, the payout was 8,000. So if you bet 1,000, you're winning 80 grand. Like,
yeah,
geez,
exactly.
Geez.
Yeah, exactly. So we were lucky enough, Wyatt and I, our little guy, to watch the race on the live screens at Century Mile. We were guests of the Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association of Alberta, the HBPA, and we're grateful for that invite. We had so much fun. And what I loved, Wyatt got to meet the jockeys, and he got to meet the owners and the trainers. And that's Rod, the trainer that took us around. He's responsible for 4 Canadian Derby championships.
Okay, yeah, but he got to meet the horses.
He got to meet the racehorses, these beautiful thoroughbreds, these magnificent animals. And we were lucky enough to get back behind the barns. But you know what? Even these people involved in horse racing and the industry that employs thousands and thousands of people across the country as well, they know that they have messaging that they want to get out there. They know that people have questions about how the racehorses are treated.
Here we go, another
and
one.
These are fair questions, right? I mean, I grew up in Calgary.
rodeo,
we can talk about
everything
chuck wagon
here,
racing.
and
We can talk about the rodeo. We can talk about whatever. And just a wonderful afternoon at the track. You got to be careful. You got to provide context. When you say I had a wonderful afternoon at the track with my 6-year-old, people are going, "What were
degenerate?"
You left him in the truck while you went and hit the slot machines, or what? No, it was family friendly, wonderful. Had an amazing time. But they understand that they want people to have a clear concept of how these animals are treated and what the culture of that sport is and what the future of the sport looks like. And I thought that kind of fit. It dovetailed nicely with the conversation that we were having here today. I do recommend you get your kids out. We had so much fun out there.
We got to keep going on that conversation too, and I'm sure we will.
Sure.
There's different things going on in California with the rodeos and how they're banning and stuff. And
and in our home city, have you seen what's going? There's a big petition out right now with Lucy the elephant.
Talk to some people.
Probably, is it fair to say, Canada's most controversial zoo scenario, which is Lucy the elephant in Edmonton? People saying this elephant doesn't belong in Edmonton, and they've had veterinarian reports through the years that are saying she's too sick to move her. She could die if you tried to move her to the sanctuary in California. Bob Barker has advocated for her transport for years. I had a chance actually to interview Bob Barker about that, the former host of The Price is Right. Yeah.
On this show.
Not on this show. No, years ago. And actually, but on this show, this was many months ago. I talked about it. People have asked me, this is one of my favorite questions because I like firing it back at people. But someone will say, what's something you've changed your mind on over the years?
Exactly.
And that was an issue when I interviewed. If we could find the archive footage, it was back when I was hosting a TV show called Breakfast Television. But Bob and I kind of I won't say locked horns. I mean, he's a legend, and you want to sort of treat him with respect. But at the same time, I did ask him a couple pointed questions. He was in Edmonton, sort of what's your background with regards to the understanding you have about these specific scenarios for you to show up and demand that Lucy be moved, implying that the people responsible for her care don't care about her.
And he changed your perspective.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he did directly, but it was sort of a longer investigation for me in how I felt about it with regards to whether or not Lucy should be transported and bigger picture, the roles that, gosh, did we want to bite this one off right now? We're supposed to be wrapping up the show, but sometimes real talk just happens. The concept of zoos, or the role that zoos play, the evolution of zoos, but they really are, at least the successful ones, are evolving because they have to. And I think they're becoming more focused on education, rehabilitation. You're seeing less celebration about this zoo just got orca whales, and everyone's going, right? This dude just got new elephants. Everyone's going, I don't know about that.
This was another thing when I stopped eating meat. I was like, the one thing I agree with on zoos is we got to get people closer to animals so they'll respect and understand and love them. And how else do you get a kid right next to like you said, an orca or a bear or a tiger or whatever? But the one thing I've been using, this line I've been using the last 5 years, is I keep reminding myself, Johnny, just keep refining your perspective.
Ooh.
Don't push anything out, because did I think when I was 20 eating meat every day that I would not be eating meat when I was 35? I had no idea. So like you said, talking to Bob Barker, your opinion can change literally on a dime when you come to a realization and you get that aha moment, right?
Yeah.
So we can't silence anyone. We got to keep talking, because if you don't, how are you going to refine your perspective at all?
Yeah, I think it's okay to change your mind, and I think it's okay to not change your mind. And the one thing that we're going to hold to, refine your perspective.
I just keep reminding myself. When I hear someone going on a rant and I don't agree, I say, listen.
Yes.
Keep refining your perspective. Put yourself in this person's shoes. Where did they come from? Like you said, these farmers, they grow. It's a family business. Who am I to say something about someone who's been doing something for generations and generations, So
it feels like a good time to mention our friends at Freeland Brothers at Freeland.com. I was there over the weekend, ran into a real talker on the way in, and ran into a real talker on the way out. And the real talker on the way out, you know who you are. You made my entire weekend with what you said, and I can't repeat it on the show.
I want to know who.
I'll tell you later. Heat up the grill season is here at Freeland Brothers. Everything you need for your perfect Alberta barbecue, whatever the weather. Now, if that's great smoker favorites out of the butcher shop with Alberta beef, Alberta pork, Alberta chicken, you can talk to their in-store butchers, let them know exactly what you need. Also, a lot of meat alternative barbecue options available. Plus, Their garden center opened just this past week. They've got baskets and planters and seeds and vegetable plants and everything else to give you a head start on your summer growing season. Freeland Brothers, for more than 65 years, proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Our friends at Local Environmental are getting set for another Trash Talk coming up this Friday. By the way, YouTube was giving us fits on Friday.
The Gremlins.
The Gremlins were at it. If you missed Trash Talk on our regular YouTube stream, check out our videos link. We posted the full show uninterrupted. Johnny's always got a backup video rolling.
Goes up every Saturday.
It goes up every Saturday. Appreciate that. You can check it out. And thanks for those of you that subscribe to our Real Talk Ryan Jesperson YouTube channel. Local Environmental Services. Some people say it's only garbage, but not to them. They believe communities deserve better. That means better service, better prices, and more support for local causes. You can learn more about them at localenvironmental.ca and send us your trash talk to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park are particularly excited about the special summer blizzard lineup. They've just rolled it up at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and in Sherwood Park at Baseline Road. That includes the Nestle Drumstick with Peanuts Blizzard Treat, the Very Cherry Chip Blizzard Treat, and the Girl Guides Chocolatey Mint Cookie Blizzard Treat for the kids. Don't ignore the Oreo Dirt Pie Blizzard Treat. You know that one's going to get them excited. And when you visit the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, you make sure you let them know you're there because of Real Talk. The first show of every week, thanks to our friends at Kuby Energy. You can check out what they do in solar. Get a free quote today at kubyenergy.ca. They get us started on the right foot. They get us seeking out the positives, the good news stories, so the week goes the way it's supposed to. We call it Positive Reflections. And I love this one from Becky. Becky sent us this email. She said, I want to tell you about a little project in our town that's making my heart feel so much lighter lately. She says, the little guy in this photo we're showing you is Hunter. Now, Hunter and his mom, Caitlin, have started a community pantry in the community of Wainwright, a great military town just east of Edmonton. What's up, Wainwright? Becky says they started small, just a hutch that they refurbished. They put it in a convenient location. They filled it with everyday needs like snacks and food and toiletries. And they put up a sign saying, take what you need and leave what you can. And over the first few days and nights, people helped themselves to things they needed from the pantry. And Caitlin was posting updates on Facebook, what had been used, what was in there, and she added more items based on what she noticed was being used and on suggestions from the public. And that's when the real magic started. Every day when she checks the pantry, she's finding items that have been left by others. People are stopping her in stores and paying for the things that she's purchasing. And when she looked up, putting up these pantries in other locations around town, realized she'd need to buy insurance. Guess what? Community members donated enough to cover the cost of the insurance. Becky says this little project that started with one little boy, Hunter, and his community-minded mom, Caitlin, has inspired people through our entire community. We look forward every day to Caitlin's updates. We're eager to hear what's been useful to people and even more, what donations have been made. In a time where it can be easy to be overwhelmed by negativity and divisiveness, this amazing little project has restored my faith in humanity. Becky says if you want to learn more about it, you can check it out on Facebook at Hunter's Little Pantry. I absolutely love that story, Becky, and thank you so much for sharing. And Hunter, attaboy, way to go. That's absolutely fantastic. Look at him there. And then, Johnny, you were telling us about a story that I felt is a perfect fit for Positive Reflections.
Yeah.
As millions of Canadians look to contribute or do what they can when it comes to the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Nestor Delano. You'll know him as DJ Nestor Delano, big DJ in the city. He started YEG for Ukraine. And they originally thought they were going to raise, a few grand to buy some supplies and stuff. He's Polish, to go down to Poland and give these out to Ukrainians fleeing. And it ended up raising close to 100 grand. So
I'm looking at it live right now. You can go to GoFundMe.com, check out YEG for Ukraine. That's the number 4, YEG for Ukraine. Johnny, right now they're at $97,967.
So they've almost got to 200 grand now. They've re-upped, and now they've become an official charity. They've reached out to other cities. YVR for Ukraine is getting started up this week, as well as Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal. So if anyone wants to donate, please go to the site. And just last week, they also got donated by an anonymous donor, 500 tourniquets which they sent out to Ukraine to help on the front lines. So lots of good things going on with YEG for Ukraine, and just an amazing initiative. If you want to go and donate anything you can, they're looking to get to a $250,000 is what they're shooting for this time.
This is something that you can do right now from the comfort of your own home. It takes just a couple of minutes. Again, YEG for Ukraine at GoFundMe.com. We'll continue to follow stories. We've got some great interviews booked coming up this week. Canadians doing what they can to make an impact there. And of course, also coming up tomorrow on the show, Northwest Fest, Canada's longest-running documentary film festival, including the powerful film Love in the Time of Fentanyl. We've got a roundtable coming up on that. We're going to talk to the filmmaker. We're going to learn more about the story and the message that Canadians need to receive as this opioid crisis continues to claim so many lives. It's the other health crisis that's not being ignored, but not getting the attention it needs through these past couple of years of COVID. These documentary filmmakers hoping to change that. These conversations continue. We know through the days. We appreciate the feedback you send us, including suggestions for upcoming segments. Later this week, we'll learn more about Twitter bots. And of course, coming up on Friday, our Real Talk Roundtable. Circular calendars now. It's the strategist joining us. 5 great shows from Monday to Friday this week. We're grateful to have you here with us. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and sharing our content. Make it a great rest of your Monday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, technical producer John Hicks, managing director Josh Dunford, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.